Good morning, ladies, gents and Pikachus. You'll excuse me, I've woken up like 10 minutes ago. I just read a comment from KurrumKarmerUK, and she's written like a fairly long post, which I did say in my rules, please don't write things that long. If you're gonna write things that long, chop it up, one point at a time, or make a video. But I feel like I have to go through this because although she's been extremely polite, this is exactly what Jesus talks about when he says a wolf in sheep's clothing. Now, she has come across like a very polite, very learned, I just wanted to have a conversation type people, but after reading her comment, it's clear that this is an anti-Semite. Now, let's go through it. She says, Jesus calls a woman a dog and infers that she is unclean. But then she straight away fails to make this point with very weak reasoning. And the reason is, she even says, the quote, do not give to dogs. Now, if I am giving to dogs, does that mean I am also a dog? No, and that's the quote. Jesus says to the woman, do not you give something to the dogs, right? So the woman is not the dog. The dogs are on the floor, the woman is the woman. She's giving something valuable to dogs. Therefore, the point Jesus is making is if I give you something valuable for free, the last thing you want to do for your own interest is give those valuable things to dogs who have no concept of value. The dogs will just try and eat them, and then they may well attack you if they're just random dogs. So the best thing for you to do when you have something valuable, says Jesus to the woman, is not you, the woman, to give those valuable things to the dogs, right? So the woman is in no way relatable to the dog. The dog is not even called unclean in any way. We don't know what the sanitary status of the dog is. So what this woman has done there is false equivalency of making the woman and the dog on an equal level below Jesus so that she can elevate Jesus above the woman and the dog and then drop the value of the dog and the woman as equals, which is not at all what do not give things to dogs says. And then she incites a racist point of view by saying this is anti-Goyism. Despite the fact that the previous 5 pages has Jesus saying salvation is for the Gentiles, and the Gentiles are the ones that salvation is for, which is why the Jews have Gentiles in their society. Like, they don't separate the two. There's no segregation in the Jewish society. They don't have people on one side and people on the other side, and it's Jews and Goyim. Goyim just means someone who is a foreigner to the land. Right? The same way as we say immigrants. Immigrants is Goyim. Goyim is immigrants. So if you are now making the case that Jesus is anti-Goyim because he has a view on immigrants, then you having a view on immigrants makes you a racist. The same way that you've done the same thing as you've done to Jesus here by saying, Jesus says, do not give to dogs what is meant for people, or, do not throw pearls to swine was your other example, and those two things are synonymous. Don't give pearls to pigs. It's not saying pigs are unclean. It's not relating pigs as people in a racist fashion. It's saying if you have pearls which are very valuable and useful to you, you shouldn't just give them to pigs who have no idea of the value of those things and won't understand them as pearls, right? So he's saying the pearls are valuable to you and you're getting them for free. So he's giving you the free gift of the pearls. He's saying, once you receive those free pearls, don't just give them to pigs who are just going to try and eat them and slosh around in mud in them. He's not saying pigs are unclean because they live in mud. Pigs do live in mud. That's not Jesus saying that. That is reality. Pigs live in mud. And because they live in mud, we know not to give them things like pearls, which they wouldn't have any concept of. So, point 1. Is the woman saying that is Jesus saying that the woman is like a dog or in any way unclean? No, absolutely not. And the fact is, you are trying to paint this false equivalency of Jesus calling the woman a dog, even though in your own words, Jesus says to her, you do not give things to dogs. So he is saying she is not a dog by saying do not give things to dogs. Unless you think Jesus can talk to dogs and he's picked out one dog who is a female and given her pearls and said, you're now above the other dogs, don't give pearls to the other dogs. You know that isn't what he's saying. So you are trying to paint the picture of Jesus in a way which he is not behaving, and you're trying to apply a false characterization to things he has said. So, do not give to dogs does not indicate that Jesus is calling the woman a dog, neither does it indicate the sanitary cleanliness of dogs in general. That's wrong. You should know this. Look, you're intelligent enough to know this. I'm not saying, when I say you're an anti-Semite, you might not be purposefully doing it, or you might have been brainwashed by someone to think that this is a good idea. You may well have used ChatGPT to write portions of your essay, and you gave ChatGPT the proposition and said, here's the proposition, please work backwards and find evidence. And that's where maybe your error has come from. In the same way that if I am a judge and someone brings a case to me with evidence to present, the correct thing, the fair thing for me to do as a judge is to take the evidence on first and consider it, and use the evidence to find a reasonable conclusion that is fair. But what you have done here is you've started with a conclusion which is unreasonable, i.e. Jesus thinks that the woman is like a dog and therefore unclean, and you have worked backwards to try and find evidence that supports your claim, and because there wasn't any, you have you've manufactured it. There's no other way to say it. Like, I'm not trying to be unkind to you. I'm not saying you're unclean in your ways. I'm saying your proposition is faulty, and therefore the evidence you have had to throw on to manufacture it into a proposition that works is also faulty. And we can see that. Do not give to dogs puts the woman in the do not bit, and the dogs in another bit. So the woman is in no way synonymous with dogs, and any intelligent person can see this. You don't need ChatGPT, a 7-page essay, or a high level of intelligence to know that. So you are inherently biased against Jesus, in which case making the anti-goyim advert with this is your example proves that you have anti-Semitic intent. Okay? Second, point 2. You also said, Jesus says, do not give children's bread to dogs. Again, Jesus is saying, you are a human being that has bread. Do not you, human being, give your bread to dogs. Again, it doesn't imply racism, which is your third, you've said that implies racism. Saying do not give children's bread to dogs doesn't imply racism, neither does it lower the woman to the station of dogs on the floor. And it doesn't even say that dogs are bad, because the dogs are the dogs are around the table, so it's obviously pet dogs that he's talking about here, whereas in the first one we didn't know. Now he's saying do not give children's bread to dogs from the table. So if you're in a house and there's a table and there's bread on the table and you have your children there, you're feeding your children, and there's dogs at the foot of the table, then that suggests that these are clean house dogs, right? So you cannot say that he is saying the woman is like the dogs when she's the one pushing the crumbs off the table. Do you see where your mistake has been made? So I wrote you a big long reply to kind of go through it point by point, but I feel like we could do this a lot simpler than your big essay, my big response. That's why I said don't do those big responses. You have made your point based around this thesis that Jesus is calling the woman a dog. False. We've proved that. Then you have put flesh on the bone by saying Jesus says dogs are unclean. Again, false. No evidence of that. And then the third point is you are saying Jesus is racist because he is saying that the dogs and the woman are equally unclean, which is completely just fanciful. You've absolutely made that up. So let's go through, as a conclusion, what these two sentences are actually saying. Do not take children's bread and give it to dogs is not saying anything about dogs. It is saying to you as a parent, if you have bread that you are giving to your children and they don't immediately eat it, or for some reason they don't want it, or they're watching the TV, or they say I'm not hungry and they've got to go to school, it's not their responsibility to take that bread on. It's your responsibility as a parent to make sure they eat the bread. So don't just say, well, fine, I'll give it to the dogs then, and lead them off to school hungry. That's what Jesus is actually saying here. Do not take your children's bread, in this case bread meaning the teachings of the Bible, do not take wisdom off your children just because they're indifferent to it, and spitefully say, fine, I'll give it to dogs then who don't care about it, therefore it will go to waste. That's the point that Jesus is making. Don't waste your wisdom and time and teachings when it should be your children that are priority to have those teachings for their own good, not just random dogs who will eat it, they'll enjoy it, but they'll get nothing more out of it than anything else, which is why they're not sat at the table, because you're not trying to nourish the dogs in this example. They don't matter. Your children matter. So he's saying your children are not like dogs. They're not just house pets. Children matter as much as you do. So there's no racism, there's no anti-goyism, there's no uncleanness, and there's no disrespect showed to the children at the table or the woman. In fact, having taken the time to give this lesson to the woman suggests that Jesus is loving, right? He is treating the woman as his child, as we know from previous portions, previous pages of this very story, when Jesus says, my child, daughter, to her. So unless you're suggesting that calling someone a daughter and a child is inciting racism, then I don't think you have any factual basis of reasoning to say the things you've said. And that's why I think you are an anti-Semite. Not maybe an evil one, I'm not saying you're a Nazi that hates Jews, but I just think your reasoning here has been taken from anti-Semitic sources, and that is why we can plainly see, as I have demonstrated, it is faulty, and shows that you have not understood the message in the passage you are claiming to have read. So, before my video gets too long, I think that is the conclusion that we can take. Your reading of these two passages is clearly wrong because you have characterized the woman who is the one pushing the crumbs off the table as the dog also, which you can't do. She's either the dog or the woman pushing the crumbs. She cannot be both. And in the words of Jesus, she's the one being told, do not give to the dogs, right? And in the first one, do not give to dogs what blah, 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 is the same. She is not the dogs. She is the one giving the thing to the dogs. And she's being told, the thing that you have, that I'm giving you, says Jesus, is more valuable to you than it is to dogs. And you'll get no benefit from it if you give it to dogs. Exactly like if I buy a sandwich at the shop, right, because I'm hungry, and I tear open the packet, if I pull out tomatoes because I don't like tomatoes and throw them on the ground and dogs eat them, that's not me saying I don't like dogs, dogs are unclean, or me being racist. It's me just not appreciating that there is nutrition in those tomatoes just because I don't like tomatoes at the moment. That's you. You just don't like wisdom of Jesus at the moment. So I would ask you, if you want the nourishment from the tomatoes of Jesus' wisdom, maybe don't throw them out and give them to dogs. Not because dogs are unclean, not because I'm being racist towards dogs because they're of a different station to me, not because the dogs don't believe in my religion, but because I like being nourished. And even though right now I might not feel like eating tomatoes, the tomatoes are good for me. And if I eat them, I will have a benefit from that, which the dogs can take or leave. It doesn't really matter to them because they're going to eat either way. So, that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed that and you learned something. God bless you all. And I'll see you lovely people in the next one. I'll get you and your little dog too. That's how you come across. Please reconsider. And the sad thing is, I think you know this is true. You must have known that when you read the thing. Do not give to dogs is saying do not give to dogs. It's not saying you are a dog and someone's giving to you. It just doesn't mean that. So anyway, that's all for now. God bless you all and I'll see you next time. Bye.